harte jullie verwelkomen op het eerste event van Capitant Gent dit jaar. We zijn blij dat jullie zo talrijk aanwezig zijn. Wij gaan beginnen met onszelf even kort voor te stellen. Wie is Capitant precies? Wat doen wij allemaal? Vervolgens een beetje uitleg over lidmaatschap. En dan kort onze sprekers voor vanavond voorstellen. Dus, Capitant. Wij zijn 5 jaar geleden ontstaan in Antwerpen. En nu zijn we al verspreid over de 3 andere steden in België ook. Dus in Gent, Brussel en Leuven. Nu, in Gent gaan we nu ons 3e volledige werkingsjaar in. Dus we bestaan 2 jaar nog. Wat zijn we precies? Een financiële studentenvereniging die probeert om studenten te begeleiden naar financiële markten en ook te helpen hoe dan ze later een job moeten krijgen binnen de financiële markt. Dus we gaan louter extracurriculair werken. Hoe doen we dat? Door middel van lezingen, workshops. Workshops gaan in iets kleinere groepen zijn. Nu, dit is een voorbeeld van een lezing uiteraard, in grote getallen. Workshops zal 40, 50 man zijn, zodat we echt dieper op bepaalde topics kunnen ingaan. External events, zoals Dag van de Tips en Finance Avenue, ondersteunen wij ook. En via ons kunnen jullie ook voordeliger daar naartoe gaan. Ik zou graag iets meer in detail gaan op de trips, meer bepaald de internship. Dat is iets nieuws sinds dit jaar. Dus volgende maand in november organiseren wij een Finance Internship. Dat is echt ook in kleine groepjes dat wij 6 bedrijven gaan bezoeken op 3 dagen tijd. De focus ligt echt om jullie klaar te stomen om effectief een stage te bekomen binnen de financiële wereld. Dus als jullie hier aan deelnemen, ik moet het waarschijnlijk niet benadrukken, maar het vergroot wel de kans dat jullie later een stage of een job in de financiële markten kunnen bekomen. Wij focussen ons wel hoofdzakelijk op 3e bachelors en 1e masters, omdat die het meest nood hebben, uiteraard. Dit gaat door in Amsterdam en Brussel. Nu, wat kunnen jullie doen voor ons? Lid worden, uiteraard. Een van de belangrijkste voordelen voor jullie voor lid te worden is het kunnen behalen van het certificaat. Nu, het certificaat is misschien wel interessant voor jullie als jullie geïnteresseerd zijn in de lezingen en de internships en alles wat wij doen. Nu, wat houdt dat precies in? Uiteraard eerst lid worden. Vervolgens moet je 3 workshops bijwonen, 3 lezingen. Vervolgens 2 external events of een finance internship. En nog het laatste luik, 1 experience luik. Dus een vakantiejob of een stage doen. Op die manier halen jullie het certificaat, wat eigenlijk een bundeling is van alle activiteiten die jullie hebben gedaan, die in een officieel document, zeg maar, komen, die jullie kunnen voorleggen aan jullie toekomstige werkgever. Op die manier kunnen jullie aantonen dat jullie naast jullie studies jullie ook extracurriculair hebben ingezet voor bepaalde financiële topics en jullie financiële interesse nog extra hebben bijgekweekt. Nu gaat mijn collega het hebben over de finance bag en over het lidmaatschap.
Goed. Het is leuk dat jullie bij zoveel aanwezig zijn, dus ik ga nu iets meer vertellen over de finance bag die jullie krijgen als jullie lid worden. Misschien zijn er al een paar onder jullie dat al gedaan hebben. Wat zit er in de finance bag? Allereerst onze Capitant Investor Guide. Dat is een tailor-made guide met zo wat tips en eerste tricks hoe dat jullie kunnen gaan beleggen op de beurs. Verder zit er natuurlijk een beetje materiaal in van onze partners en in het bijzonder van For Your Campus. Dat zijn onze partners die de tijdschriften en de financiële magazines geprovide hebben vanavond. En we zijn zeer blij dat we vanavond de CEO Freddy de Groe en Catherine Dekker helemaal vanuit Londen kunnen verwelkomen. Dan verder natuurlijk krijgen jullie de Capi-kaart, die jullie kunnen tonen op onze events, scannen en kunnen gebruiken voor het certificaat te behalen. Verder, wat kunnen jullie nog doen voor ons? Naar onze events komen natuurlijk, maar dat is vanavond al vrij goed gelukt. Verdere events dit jaar zullen zijn onder andere de Traders Trophy Workshop in de week van 20 oktober, die valt eigenlijk op 22 oktober. Verder, begin november organiseren we onze lezing in verband met het financieren van start-ups. En verder in november gaan we ook nog de Business School Fair organiseren. Dat is zo een fair waar dan scholen aanwezig zijn voor moesten jullie nog geïnteresseerd zijn om eventueel na jullie reguliere studies een business school te gaan doen. En om het jaar een beetje chiller af te sluiten, gaan we een netwerkevent organiseren, de Capi Cinema. Jullie kunnen ons natuurlijk volgen, allereerst op de website www.capitan.be, dat hebben jullie waarschijnlijk al eens bezocht hopelijk. De foto's van vanavond zullen morgen ook te vinden zijn op onze Facebookpagina, Capitant Gent. En jullie kunnen natuurlijk al het financiële nieuws volgen op Twitter bij Capitant Tweets. Dus nu vanavond, waarom jullie hier allemaal zijn. Allereerst wil ik nog een beetje wijzen op de wedstrijd die momenteel gaande is. Over ganse campus zijn er tweets verspreid van Goldman Sachs Elevator Gossip, waar dat er een voorbeeld hiervan staat. Als jullie een selfie trekken met een van die tweets, die op Facebook plaatsen en Capitant Gent taggen, maken jullie kans op de boek van die meneer daar, die Straight to Hell heeft geschreven. En na de lezing is er natuurlijk nog tijd voor een receptie met bier, frisdrank en gin tonics. En dan denk ik dat wij genoeg gebabbeld hebben en zou ik graag nu onze sprekers introduceren. Vincent Valkiers van Morgan Stanley, Philippe de Vusser van Deutsche Bank en Bastien Hermans van Lazard. Graag jullie applaus.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. We're going to stick to English tonight for any international students and for one of my colleagues here tonight. Welcome to the event, How to Become an Investment Banker. First off, my appreciation to the Capitan team for organizing this. These are initiatives that we greatly appreciate and try to support, of course. So hence our presence here tonight. I've brought with me two colleagues. This is not your standard company presentation. We're not here to tell you how great our employer is, but it's really to inform you about the world of investment banking. So what does an investment bank do? What are investment banks looking for in recent graduates if you want to apply for a position? I will try to give you some insight on some tips and tricks on how you can make it there. So we'll quickly introduce ourselves. So I'm Vincent Valkiers. I work at Morgan Stanley. I do Benelux coverage in the IBD team. I'm based in London. I joined in 2014, so I'm second year analyst now. Before that, I did an off-cycle internship for 3 months in the same team. Previously did a 4-month internship at ABN AMRO in Amsterdam. And I studied at Vlerick Business School and have a master in applied economics at University of Antwerp as well.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bastien Hermans. As you can see, I joined Lazard in 2014. After 3 years in consulting, so it might be also interesting for you to better understand how I see the difference between the two industries. I'll talk about that tonight as well. I graduated from Sorbonne Business School, which is a French-speaking university in Brussels, hence my lovely accent. I've also studied the CFA, which is also something that you might as well look into, so happy to gather your questions. Feel free to shoot any questions, either during the Q&A now or around the gin tonic later on, or even afterwards. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me.
Hello everybody, thanks for being here tonight. I'm Philip and I'm from Deutsche Bank. I actually joined Deutsche Bank in 2013 doing an off-cycle internship, and then I joined full-time straight afterwards. I also interned at a PE firm called Gilde, that was in Brussels. I have a master from HEC Paris, master's in finance, and also from KU Leuven. I did business engineering there. So tonight we're going to look at several things. Like Vincent already mentioned, that's easier. Okay, like Vincent already mentioned, we're going to tell you something more about investment banking. We have 4 key questions. The first one is, what is investment banking? I'm going to cover that. Why opt for investment banking? That's something Bastien is going to look at. What are investment banks looking for? That's for Vincent. And how to get there also for you, right? Yeah. And then also, we're going to have a Q&A session. And I hope you guys have a lot of questions for us. and don't hesitate to ask everything that's on your mind. What is investment banking? So, when I was a student, and people asked me, what is investment banking? I had a tough time, because for me it was super complex, like this slide. A lot of terms, a lot of words that I didn't understand, and it was very hard for me to say it in one sentence, what is investment banking? Now that I'm in the industry, it's much easier. It's still kind of tricky because it's super complex, and there's a lot of opinions on the industry. There's a lot of stuff in the newspapers, and some of that stuff might be right, but not everything. And so we're here to tell you some more about it. So I really kind of like this slide, because when somebody would ask me what is investment banking, I would tell them it's mainly three things, not to bore them too much. The first one is corporate finance advisory, and that's mainly what we do here, like us three. I think 80% of my time goes to that, and that's obviously you all know M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and big examples in this region is obviously everything that Mark Cooker, Omega Pharma, Perigo did, like this kind of stuff. Also, Deleuze Ahold is a big M&A transaction from this year, and also everything the national favorite ABA InBev is doing currently, actually, with Seth Miller. So, if you guys want to interview in banking, keep reading the press on these transactions, and you will be good to go. Other stuff I would like to talk about on this topic is defense. Maybe none of you guys know it, but sometimes you have like unsolicited offers for a company, like a hostile offer, or you have like an annoying shareholder, like an activist shareholder, like an Apple, for example, that's annoying you. What you can do then is approach an investment bank and ask them for advice how to deal with those kind of situations. That's something we do often, and it's kind of a nice transaction to work on, because it's very, very ad hoc, and it's very exciting too. The second thing that we do basically is debt and equity advisory and origination. Sounds difficult, but it's not that difficult. So it's basically ECM, DCM is a short for it. I will start with ECM. ECM is equity raising. So basically when a company comes to you and according to their ideal capital structure, they need some equity. We as a bank help them raising it. We actually we calculate the optimal sizing of the equity and the optimal product. So one of the products is initial public offering, is an IPO. So basically when a private company wants to go public, we as a bank can help them in setting the price range for their shares and actually bring these shares to the market, to the investors. Secondary offering is kind of the same, but it's for a company that's already listed, so it's different. And then a rights issue is another product where you actually raise capital, but you don't want to dilute the existing shareholders too much. So basically you have another product that's a right that's linked to the share, and you sell it separately. Then going to DCM, the second line, you see different words there, like basically high yield and investment grade bonds. So we sell those bonds to investors, we create the products and the tranches, and then we actually we tell the company which institutional investors are really good for these kind of products, and we sell it to them. We advise them for the optimal buyer for these kind of products. So another thing is leverage finance. When a private equity company wants to purchase a company, this is called a leverage buyout, and a leverage finance loan is typically how you finance these kind of transactions. Acquisition finance is kind of similar, but also different, because it's for corporates. When large corporates want to take over a division or a whole company, we basically, that's called acquisition finance, the way you finance it. So for a listed entity or like a large corporate, it's super important that they think about their ratings, so S&P, Moody's, and Fitch. So an acquisition financing team will not only advise them on how to raise debt, but also what to do with their ratings, how to approach the agencies, how to talk about it to them, and make sure that they keep on the same rating, if they want to, at least. So then you have the Chinese wall, very important, because we all, the three of us, are on the upper side. We are in the private domain, and below that is the public domain. So that's markets. So I'm not a specialist on that. I don't work there. I work on the other side. But basically you have sales and trading there, equity research, and a load of other stuff that I don't know anything about, so don't ask me about it. And there can be a conflict of interests, as you can see in the green box, because when people like us share information across the wall, it can lead to a conflict of interest because we have private information from companies and we cannot share this anyhow with our colleagues in markets. Sometimes there are situations when somebody needs to know something, it's on a need-to-know basis, but this doesn't happen that often. So basically, this is a problem that's been there, like always, for investment banks, and there's a lot of scrutiny around it, and we, like young bankers, have to really think about this kind of stuff and really make sure that we don't do anything like to breach this kind of Chinese wall that's there. And also for people to trust us, this wall has to be in place and super strong. So this is really something that you need to understand, and that's how we actually do our business on a daily basis. So this side is a bit more difficult, but basically shows you how on the left side you have the people that buy our products, those are governments, corporations, and financial institutions. On the right side you have the people with money, and the asset managers, the pension funds, the insurance companies, and the individuals. And basically we are in the middle, so we're the intermediary. We basically link those two parties together. So we bring the money from the right side, to the left side. Basically, we, as you can see on the top arrow, and then by issuing securities from the left side to the right side, we actually offer advisory services on both sides. So it's all a bit tricky, but that's the way it works. And you can see the products on the bottom. So there are equity, I talked about it, the equity products, you have the debt products, then you obviously have the FX and all that kind of stuff that's below the Chinese wall. Commodities also below, M&A real estate is on all sides, I would say. So basically we're in the middle, and we are the party linking everybody together, make sure that the money is flowing into the system, and there's like an optimal use of capital. That's the role of an investment bank. So this is another interesting slide. It's a matrix where you can actually see you have two variables. The first one is the presence from local on the bottom to global, and then from the left to the right basically says how much products you offer. The guys on the left side offer a lot of products, the guys on the right are super focused. So there's no good or bad. All of the banks are constantly balancing between where they want to be in this matrix. Like all employers want to be on the top, for sure. They don't want to be like on the bottom, but they're like thinking about where to move on the left to right scale. Because from our own employer, we're probably moving to the right soon, because as was in the news, we're going to sell our retail bank. So basically, most of these guys on the left were once acquired by a commercial bank. For example, Bank of America took over Merrill Lynch, Chase took over JP Morgan, stuff like that. That's how they actually ended up in the left top corner. Like on the left, the main advantage for these kind of guys is that they have a lot of products, they have a very big platform, and basically they're a one-stop shop for everybody. In the middle, the guys get more focused and become really good at everything they do actually. And on the right side, these guys actually do one thing, do it super well, and conflict-free. So that's the big difference actually between the left and the right. As I said before, sometimes big banks like Deutsche Bank, also Barclays, everybody on the top left corner has a conflict of interest. And yeah, it's a decision. And I think like all of these banks on the top left corner are constantly contemplating where they want to be. So that's something to keep in mind and to think about. There's actually no big difference between these names, you know? It's just, they're all good employers, they do their job very well, but it's a personal choice, I would say. Then also the local guys, it's a bit different, you know, it's a different scale. They also do a good job, obviously, and we compete with them, you know, like I can tell you that for me on a daily basis in the job I do, also in the Benelux team, like my colleagues here, we see ING and ABN AMRO on a daily basis, and they're doing very well, you know, like because they have a lot of client contact, they have a good relationship with everybody, with all the corporates, and they have a financing relationship with everybody. So basically, those things really tie companies towards this kind of banks. And for us, it's harder to to have competition with those banks, because we are the big, like, evil international banks, and sometimes, yeah, that's why my team actually has a local presence in the Benelux, because we want to break this kind of stereotype. That's it for me, I guess. Then we move over to Bastien for the second part.
Okay, so why opt for investment banking? Maybe before deep diving into the specificities, of the value proposition of investment banking, I'll start with two generic statements. The first one is that you are all smart, well-educated students, more mobile than ever, so you can basically go wherever you want in the world, more connected than ever, so you're actually facing an unlimited array of possibilities for your future career. So it's not an easy choice for you. There are a lot of possibilities. You could decide to do audit in New Zealand, to work for an NGO in South America, to work for a tech firm in the US, whatever. So you name it. Second statement, life is short. Don't spend your life living the one of somebody else. So you need to quickly triangulate what will be a good choice for you, or follow your guts, what will be something that will really make you happy. Sounds a bit silly, but that's really important. If you don't know what you're looking for, keep looking, okay? Don't settle. All right? So after this almost philosophical introduction, let's look at this first slide, basically showing my first point. So you have a whole lot of choices possible for you. This slide is basically reflecting a recent poll among European business students. You can see that actually the FMCG is quite attractive for the students. Quite closely after that, actually, you have the financial institutions. You have as well the consulting and the audit firms, the tech firms, and you have all kind of other firms like chemicals, automotive, and so on. You can as well decide to create your own company. You can also join an NGO, for instance, and you can actually also work for the government, for instance. You could launch yourself in politics, whatever. So there are a lot of possibilities for you guys. What I focus on tonight is on banking and consulting. Why these two is basically because I had experience in the two. Plus, I think that there are quite some competition recruiting-wise between the two. I think the CEO of Goldman Sachs once said that his biggest competitor with regards to the recruitment process are not JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, but rather McKinsey and Bain. So I think there is a reason for that. There are a lot of common grounds between the two, but there are also some key differentiating factors that I would like to share with you tonight. All right, so what are the common grounds? Basically, the fact is that the first point is really important for me. I think it's one of the most important points for, at least in my job, is the fact that you're facing a variety of situations. You're working for different clients, different industries. So you're never fully in your comfort zone. You're always facing new situations. You need actually to be intellectually curious about it. So that's the same in consulting and investment banking, I would say. Next point is obviously the fact that you'll be working as a team. So each team will be tailored to the given project. So let's say, for instance, that you're working for AB InBev, advising them on the risk takeover of Sab Miller. Of course, we would have a team mixing the Benelux team, because part of the shareholders are over here in Belgium, mixing maybe with South American teams, because part of the shareholders are in Brazil, mixing it with your retail team. In the case of Lazard, it's based in New York. Mixing it maybe even with a team in London, because the target company is headquartered in London. So the team is usually quite diverse, changing from one project to the other one. So because obviously each project is specific to a given industry. I think that all of us, we have sector teams covering the different sectors. The good point of our team, which is actually regional, is that you are not focused. So we have a Benelux team working for the Benelux-based clients, but in all kind of projects. Next one is the international dimension. So as I just mentioned it, usually you're working with other offices, because the sector team is based outside of the Benelux, and also because given the size of our little countries, you quite quickly cross the border, so it's most of the time relevant to involve other geographies as well. Next point is strategic decisions. The point is that every decision you would actually advise a client upon is highly strategic. If you compare that to consulting, I think that consulting is strategic, but more for organic growth. So they would advise the client in sales excellence, how to cut costs, how to improve the market penetration of that product, how to launch this product, and so on and so forth. While for M&A advisors, it's more about combining your business with somebody else, acquiring another company, divesting part of your business. So both are quite strategic and important decision, of course, which leads to the next point, is the fact that you will have quite some good exposure to what we call the C-level management. It's actually, so you will actually interact on a daily basis with CEOs, CFOs, chief strategy officer, head of business development, chairman, member of the board. And I can tell you that at the age of 24, 25 is quite impressive. And that you won't find that in any other business. I can guarantee you that. The last one is the fact that you have sound exit opportunities. I think that everybody is recognizing that both investment banking and management consulting are great schools. So you will never make, let's say, a bad move going in that direction. You can easily switch careers afterwards. And I think that the headhunters, if not on a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis, is approaching everybody in consulting and investment banking for future careers opportunities. So that's the common ground. There are some differences that, again, this is my point of view. I guess that should Philip or Vincent do the same exercise, it won't lead to the same balance. So I think one of the most important points, that's a question we often get, is what about work-life balance? So I think you all guys know that investment banking is not it's quite of a tough environment. You're working in small, flexible and nimble teams and they're expecting the same from you. So I mean that working during the weekends is not extraordinary. And I mean during the week you're working pretty hard as well. Don't get me wrong, in consulting it's pretty much the same, especially during the week. But I think that the work-life balance is obviously a bit better over there, we can't deny it. What I think though is that it's getting better. I think that most of the banks are paying more and more attention to that, not only because we're in direct competition with these consulting firms, but at least they're paying more and more attention to that. I think all the banks in London have now like special policies for the interns, and it's getting the same for the most junior levels, let's say. And it's getting better as well as the years roll on. I mean, as a first year analyst, the comfort zone is obviously quite small, quite reduced, learning a lot of stuff. You don't really know where to go and so on, so you take more time to do the same type of exercise that you do a year or two afterwards. I mean, I'm at Lazard now for almost 2 years, and I can tell you that I'm a totally different person. I'm actually mastering much more all the financial background and so on. So I mean, all kind of analysis, I know exactly what I need to do, how much time I will need for that. So actually you're managing a bit better your time, and the work-life balance is improving. Next point is the fact for consulting, obviously you're on the road all the time. I mean, I've spent 3 years traveling, and there are not a lot of continent I haven't been to. It's pretty interesting, it's pretty nice to be always discovering new countries and so on. What I can tell you though is that after 3 years I was quite happy to settle down a bit more in Belgium, or at least to settle down in a specific place. And also the fact is that when you're traveling all the time, you don't really discover the cities as well, except if you're being staffed on a 4-month project at a specific place and staying over there. What that usually is like flying in on Monday, flying out on Friday, with back-to-back meetings the whole week. So I was not really discovering the city besides my trip from the airport to the client space. All right, so next point, less hierarchy. The fact is that's again, I know we don't agree on that point, but that's my point of view, is the fact that the hierarchy is a bit flatter in the management consulting. While in investment banking, of course, it's more visible. And I don't see that actually as a bad point. What I mean by that is that everybody has his own role in the process. Each mistake can cost millions of euros to your clients. So obviously there are a checklist to go through. There are people checking your work, and everybody's taking responsibility in it. Last point again is the fact that consulting might be perceived as a bit more qualitative than investment banking. Of course, there is always a mix of the two, but I would say that the mix is more geared towards the quantitative side for investment banking. So let's go now to the other side of the balance. Deal closing, concreteness of the business. I think this is the most important thing, the most important differentiating factor for investment banking. Basically, in consulting, you could work during a year or so on a specific project without knowing if your advice has been implemented within the company. That's really frustrating. I can guarantee you that. While in investment banking, of course, you can have some frustration because basically you can work during years on specific deals without anything happening. But I mean, the happiness of just opening a newspaper and seeing the outcome of what you've worked on during months and months. I mean, there is a clear transaction happening. That's absolutely different from the frustration you might endure in consulting. Next point is the fact that you have a much broader audience. Basically, on a day-to-day basis, you would talk a lot with lawyers. So it might be your own lawyers, it might be the lawyers responsible for the antitrust European Commission track, might be the lawyers responsible for drafting the share purchase agreement and all kind of stuff for your clients. It might be the lawyers from the other side. Let's say you actually selling a company. There are 4 or 5 buyers, and each of these guys will have their own lawyers lined up. You will work as well with the advisors, your own advisors and the advisors of the other buyers, for instance. So you will work with the one responsible for the commercial due diligence. So you will work with McKinsey, with Bain, and so on. You will work with the one responsible for the legal for the tax and the financial due diligence, usually one of the big 4. You will work with environmental due diligence advisor. You will work with technical due diligence advisor if needed. If it's a complex product or new technology, let's say. You will work with a pension advisor and so on and so forth. You will work also with the legal authorities. Let's say that you want to do a site takeover. You need to alert the FSMA in Belgium and whatever. So you still in contact with these guys as well. So on a day-to-day basis, you're interacting with a lot of people. I can tell you that your network in a year or so will be quite impressively higher than the year before. So that's something I really appreciate in investment banking. Next one is the fact that in a way it's more strategic. Again, in consulting, you have all kind of different projects. It can be M&A, actually advising on M&A as well, but more from a strategic point of view. Like it doesn't make sense for these 2 companies to be together. But it might well be the case that you're working, during 6 months on the pricing of a new button of a machine. So the strategic dimension of your projects varies quite drastically depending on the projects. Okay, so in summary, what you get dynamic and stimulating environment. You get to work in a team-oriented culture. You work with best-in-class clients and with quite impressive transactions. You are all the time challenged intellectually. You have, of course, opportunities to grow and develop yourself. You have a diversity of people and cultures. And you're working, I think it's a bit redundant with the second point, you're working with extremely talented individuals and teams. You're working mostly with the top management, so they're supposedly the best of their firms. So it's pretty something you can appreciate. Okay, next question. What are investment banks looking for? Basically, before looking at, let's say, the tick boxes, the boxes you need to tick as ideal candidates, let me maybe go through what is the role of a first-year analyst. I saw in the description of the event that actually you would get to see the difference, the gaps between the movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, and what we're actually doing. So I guess I'll disappoint you to some extent. We're not dealing drugs on a daily basis. We're not showing midgets, at least not officially. So let me go back to the slides. So the first one, I think that's something that you would mostly do during the first year, is basically crunching the numbers. So basically you need to gather the different numbers from the company, from the different sources from IS, the broker reports and so on. You will work on the valuations through different methodologies. I guess you've learned that during your finance courses. We'll also need to find the best deal structure. So let's say for instance that you need to buy or you want to buy a company, combine your business with the business of somebody else. What is the best structure? Is it a joint venture? Is it a merger? Is it an asset deal? Is it an asset swap? Whatever you name it. So you need to advise the clients on what would be the best. Or can I actually buy the company? Is it by cash? Is it by shares? Is it a mix of both? What price are you paying? So everything is something that the first year analyst would work on a daily basis. Next one, of course, is preparing presentations. So this is usually the medium of discussion with the clients. So basically, you need to translate what you've crunched in something that is understandable and simple for your clients. So as an analyst, what you will do is that basically you will hold the pen. So basically you would keep the master of the presentation, incorporating the feedback from the different team members, and making sure that you're actually integrating the markups. You will also be responsible for the printing, but maybe a bit less glorious, but that's something quite important as well, that the whole presentation is in a good shape. Next one is of course that you need to do some deal specific to, just some tasks deal specific to certain deals. You need to work on the management presentation, you need to manage the conference calls, you need to manage the data room, you need to manage the Q&As when you're dealing for sales side with different buyers, with different advisors that each of them a lot of questions for the company. The last point, you need of course to participate in the client's meeting. So as a first year analyst, what we're basically expecting from you is to take notes and to also participate in the discussions. Let's say for instance the client has a really precise question on something that might have been overlooked by the other members of the team. We expect you to step in and to either give the answer or at least show them how we can answer this question. Last point, of course, is a team events, the one in the middle. So as we're doing today, we're just participating to all kind of events, either branding your own bank or branding the industry in general. And you will get to also to develop your own network, and that's something pretty important, especially if you're there for the long run. Investment banking is also a people business built on trust, as Philip mentioned. So it's pretty important as well to develop your network. As I said, you will quickly be facing all kind of people, and you will be invited to all kind of events. And I would just advise you to go as much as possible to these kind of events. Okay, I think this is my last slide. So basically, what are we actually valuing to a potential candidate? I think that Vincent is going to detail that a bit more, but I think again that you shouldn't live the life of somebody else. I'm just repeating myself, but that's very important that you understand what you're looking for. It's up to you to tell yourself, okay, is this something that is reflecting me or not? So I think that the first point is obviously that you need to have a deep interest in finance, in the current affairs, because obviously that's what our business is about. You need to be curious, of course, because again, as I mentioned, you will be always facing new situations, new sectors and so on, so you will always, I would say that the learning curve is always pretty steep in investment banking. Next point, we were talking about the Chinese wall, but I think that more than that, I mean, in investment banking, even if we sometimes have a bad reputation, I think that integrity, both moral and intellectual integrity, is utmost important. As I already mentioned, everything is built upon trust with your clients or even within your team. So you really need strong to be quite integral. Next one is maybe the fact that you needed to be committed. You need a can-do attitude, a proactive attitude. That's something we value a lot. Next one, communication skills. As I mentioned, okay, you're dealing all the time with all kinds of people. You need to communicate in a simple, understandable way, quite complex concepts to your client. So being able to clearly communicate a complex message is quite important as well in this business. Team player, of course, leadership qualities. Of course, you need to be stress resistant. Again, you're always out of the comfort zone, facing quite stiff deadlines all the time. So you need to be able to cope with it. Maybe two last points. That's not actually on this slide, but I think that what is also important is the fact that you need to be, you need to be coachable, meaning that you need to be open to criticism, you need to be open to learn. I know you all come from good university and so on, but that's something really important, that's something we don't really talk about it, but that's something that is actually utmost important. You need to find mentors, but the other way around, you need to be coachable, so that the mentors would actually like to learn new stuff. And that last point, again, maybe I will just finish with that. It's again that you really need to find what you like. I would really advise you to go to as many as possible presentations about consulting, FMCG or whatever, just for you to be able to compare all the value propositions, to better triangulate what is expected and what is good for at the different companies, so that you can better make a decision, which is quite important for you guys. Thank you.
You've gotten an indication of how an investment bank works. We've touched upon the role of an analyst and what we as the banks are looking for profile-wise in recent graduates. So my question to you now is, who of you is actually considering a career in investment banking? Please raise your hands. I will not ask any questions, so don't be shy. Higher, a bit higher. Okay, a bit. Good. So the question then arises how to get there. I mean, let's be honest, this is going to be a very competitive process. You're competing not only against fellow students here in this hall, you're basically competing against students from top universities globally. I personally overviewed the Belgian and Dutch recruiting at Morgan Stanley, and something that I nearly always notice, and I don't know if that's the same in other banks, is Belgian students are always less prepared than, for instance, Dutch students. Now, I think one of the key purposes of this talk that we're having is to give you guys some tips and tricks to close the gap with all those Dutch guys and basically steal their jobs, because I would personally rather have a Belgian in my team than a Dutch guy. We've defined 4 pillars. Read, watch, study, and act, but basically you can summarize them in prepare yourself. I mean, probably most of you are doing an economics course or a finance course, just getting your bachelor's or master's degree. Let's be honest, that's not going to cut it. You need to prepare yourself outside of your studies. And this slide can be very useful to you guys. So let's go through these pillars a bit in more detail. I think the read and the watch, they're very jointly. You should consider them a bit jointly. This is what Philip already mentioned, is become aware of what's going on in the world. Not just financially, but be aware of current events. It makes you a more interesting person to talk to, and you can actually add some value in discussions with your client, but also with your seniors and your peers. Read financial newspapers, read magazines, read blogs. Obviously, the TED, Financial Dagblad, those are very good to stay up to date on economic news in the Benelux region. I would also advise you to get a subscription at The Economist. This may sound a bit boring, but in my opinion, there's nothing as good as The Economist to stay up to date with current events. And moreover, it goes beyond the facts because they provide a critical opinion, and this makes you think a bit further about all these different developments that are going on. Dealbook is a great blog about investment banking. It provides valuable stories on the most recent M&A transactions, IPOs, you name it. So it's a good way to stay up to date. And of course, the Financial Times and Wall Street Journal. Obviously, if you have the time and the possibility, watch some financial news. Check out Bloomberg TV, CNBC, CNN. Again, great critical programs. People basically 20 years in the industry providing their opinions. This is really a great learning school. And it's at your disposal. For literally no cost, right? Studying, as I said, it goes beyond your master or your bachelor's degree. You really need to focus on getting better in accountancy, valuation methodologies in order to pass these technical interviews, because these can be quite tricky. Now, it's a pretty straightforward title, but the book Investment Banking is a really great place to start. I think I personally read it about 3 or 4 times before I did my first interview. So I would definitely recommend that. Valuation from McKinsey, some of you may know it. It's thicker than the Bible. Please don't learn this by heart, but it's a good background read. Again, corporate finance, but this is a bit broader, obviously. Now, online, don't just focus on like all the technical aspects. I mean, there's a way to pass these interviews. They're basically set up always in a bit of the same way, but we'll touch upon that shortly. But basically, you can sort of get a good sense of how these interviews progress by just reading up on it online. So Wall Street Oasis, mergers and acquisitions, Wikipedia, Macabacus. That's all great to sort of get a sense of, okay, what are frequently asked questions, how is the interview structured, and this is really valuable information. Now, numerical reasoning tests, definitely always practice those before you apply at a bank, but we'll come to that shortly as well. Merger Market, which is a database for recent M&A news. You might be able to access it through your university, but I'm not sure. Then courses, Breaking into Wall Street, super valuable. They have a huge appendix with tons of frequently asked questions in investment banking interviews, as well as all the answers step by step. So this makes it, for us interviewers, always a bit tricky to come up with something new. Ace the Case, this is really focusing on guesstimates, brain teasers, for instance, how many ping pong balls fit in a Boeing 747. That might be an interview question that you get. CFA program, Bastian has done it. We put it between brackets because it's definitely not a prerequisite for a career in investment banking. But I think we all agree that, I mean, this is very good for your overall development, and this provides you a good, say, corporate finance backbone. These all lead to basically one thing, that is ACT, which we divide in 2 main parts, so gain experience and network. Probably some of you are bachelor students, some are master students. The younger you are, the better. Don't wait until you graduate to look for a first internship. Use the summertime, use any time that you have off to look for an internship. This can be with a smaller local bank, preferably in a corporate finance position, of course. This can also be with a corporate in a corporate finance position in an industry that you're interested in, such as telco or utilities company, whatever. Engage in business cases, competitions, such as the Solve a Business game, for instance. If we read on your resume that you ended in the top 3, I mean, that's definitely a plus. Or you can even start a business. Doesn't have to be anything having over 1 million in revenue after the first year, but it shows that you have a bit of a commercial sense, which is super important in this business. Secondly, network. So attend company presentations. associations, attend recruitment events. I think since you're already here, you're on the right track there. Join alumni associations, study trips such as the one that Capitant organized, or the London Banking Circuit, which is organized by the Munn Society. Cold calling, don't take this too literally. Don't stalk a managing director on his mobile phone, but feel free to send an email with your cover letter, your resume, and just quickly 2 lines saying that you're interested in the position. And usually you definitely take a very close look at those. And LinkedIn is always useful to see who people are in the sort of positions that you're interested in at the various banks. The selection and application process, it is quite lengthy, but it's a bit the same for every bank really. So it nearly always starts with an online application, regardless of whether you send us an email or not, with your resume, cover letter, and depending on the bank, some open questions. This can be, can you come up with something that has happened recently which could affect our business, and how does it affect it? Or more simply, can you come up with an experience that you had in the past where you performed as a leader, stuff like that. Your resume, try to keep it clean. You may have seen one of the points previously, attention to detail. So use consistent layouts, try to elaborate a bit on the experience that you've had, try to highlight some of your key strengths throughout the various things that you've done. I would not include any pictures, it basically makes everything worse. Cover letter, super important, especially if you don't have like the most apparent banking profile. You can be super motivated, and if that comes, if that translates to your cover letter, I mean, we definitely pick it up, and that's very important as well. Try obviously to avoid any stupid mistakes like spelling and grammar. You would be amazed how many spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes you notice. This just shows that you're not really that motivated. You don't have that much attention to detail, so it's super important. Don't send the wrong cover letter to another bank. Sometimes I get letters addressed to JP Morgan, which is a bit weird. Online testing. So once you've done that, you'll probably get an email to perform a numerical reasoning test. And this is basically, you show a bunch of pictures, graphs, tables, and you'll be asked to do very standard mathematical calculations, such as, for instance, the percentage change, or basically using some Forex calculations, stuff like that. Usually it's 20 minutes for 20 questions. Key tip is here, take your time, try to answer each question correctly. It's better than answering all 20 of them and making a lot of mistakes. Then the application screening. So once you've done the top 2 points, we look at your application, and we go through your resume. As I mentioned, educational experience, results, try to highlight those in your resume. If you don't include any results, you probably think something is wrong and the results aren't that great, so put them in there. Work and leadership experience, obviously, and extracurricular experience that you've done, so there's competitions that we talked about. Skills and hobbies. In the end, we're not looking for a machine, right? We're looking for someone to work with on a daily basis. We're looking for nice guys and girls that we can talk to about stuff that's not related to work as well. So be someone interesting, have a story to tell. And that also leads to the motivation, but we discussed that during the letter. Application style, as I mentioned, keep it clean, keep a very nice format, and then numerical test results, that's obviously important as well. And if you're lucky, you get invited to the first round interviews, and these consist of 2 to 3 junior interviews, so it will be with people from our level and with associates. If those goes well, you will be invited to senior interviews, so that's with officers such as vice presidents, directors, managing directors, and so on. Now these interviews typically consist of a motivational part and a technical part. I mean, motivational, that's pretty straightforward. Why do you want to do banking? Why do you want to work for our bank? Basically, all the typical questions that you can think of. And then the technical questions, now those are a bit tricky. So, as I mentioned, be sure to prepare yourself very well. Have a good read about what the potential questions are that you could be asked during an interview, and be aware, obviously, of the answers. Final round interviews, if everything goes well. Now, this depends a bit from bank to bank. At Morgan Stanley, it's called an assessment center. You'll be invited to London for a very stressful day at our office. Again, you'll have to do a numerical test. You'll have 2 more interviews. You'll have an individual case study and a group exercise. Now, the individual case study and the group exercise, that's something pretty straightforward. Usually you'll be asked if you're consulting a company. We have a couple of M&A possibilities, and you basically advise them, okay, which target would we acquire, how much would we pay for it, how would we structure the transaction, and what's the strategic rationale behind everything that we're doing. If you perform well at those assessment centers, or at any other final interview that you may have, you receive an offer from us. So we'll call you, saying, hey, you did a good job. We'd like you to join our firm for an internship or a full-time position. And then you have about 1 or 2 weeks to accept the offer. And once you've signed, then obviously we do our best to stay in touch. We invite you to team events, and you're basically part of the corporate family, I would say. So that concludes my part. I guess now we have some time for the Q&A, so we'll welcome any questions that you may have.
First question, please. Who dares?
That's a good question. Actually, the reason why I did the CFA is I didn't want to lose track on the financials, let's say. So while I was working in consulting, I basically passed the 2 levels of the CFA. As Vincent said, I think it's providing you with a good financial backbone, but it's actually not that common, at least in M&A. We see a lot of CFAs more in asset management and stuff like this. If you look at the level 3, for instance, it's only around asset management, so it might be a bit less relevant for M&A. So I would say, again, it's a good plus. If there's a candidate having it, obviously next to his studies, it's a good plus. We can see the commitment and some interest, but it's not a must-have, I'd say.
Next one. We'll answer then the question of all 3 of us. I think that's a good. For personally, it's a tricky question, you know. Like for me, when I started, I have to be honest, I thought I would be out after like 3 years. But currently, I don't see myself leaving like very soon, because I really enjoy it and it's challenging, and I don't see any other industry offering the same type of progression or learning curve. So obviously, I would like to work in Silicon Valley but that's a dream, you know, like for everybody, I guess. But this currently for me is the best thing out there, you know, like I really enjoy it, and it's a thing I like, and it's I don't see very, very interesting alternatives currently. So
yeah, I think for me it was exactly the same. I think many of the people who start in banking, they think I'm going to do this, work hard for 1.5 years, and then I'll do my exit, go to a BE shop where I have to work a lot less and earn a very decent wage as well. But this experience has been super rewarding. The learning curve that I've had over the past year is incredible. I'm 25. I'm sitting at the table with CFOs and CEOs of big Belgian and Dutch companies, and that's an opportunity you're not going to get anywhere else. You can join a big corporate and work 9 to 5 and have a lot of holidays, but you're not going to get the same learning opportunities. That's a trade-off you need to make. And I think what's also important to note in investment banking is, in the beginning, you're going to work hard, but the more senior you become, the less hours you're going to work. If you look at a corporate, you're going to start at a 9 to 5, but if you become a manager or if you become a CFO, you're the 6-year-old guy that's still at his computer at 12 a.m. at night. But that doesn't happen in banking.
Yeah, I guess I don't have much to add, but the point, I already made a career switch, so from consulting to banking. So I guess now I told myself I'll be there at least for 4 or 5 years. I mean, for the time being, of course, I remain open. So each time I'm actually meeting a client, I'm telling myself, okay, would I see myself working over there? And usually the answer is no, for the reasons that I've pointed out in my slide. Basically, what is the advantage of investment banking? What is the value proposition? So yeah, my simple answer is for the moment no. So I think the main trigger was, let me be honest about it. There are 2 reasons. The first one is the fact that I was, again, you can work with on highly strategic projects. For instance, there are some guys at BCG where the project is basically solve the problem of paludism in the world, you know. So that's great, but that's not the bulk of the projects. You get a mix of projects, and sometimes it might be quite operational projects. So really optimizing something really specific. So that's the first point. Second point is the fact that you might work during months and months on a specific solution. You design the solution with your client, and actually afterwards you don't even know if it was implemented. So that can be pretty frustrating. While if you're looking at investment banking, you don't have this issue. It's always super strategic. You're always interacting with the top management, and there is not a deal, but at least there is something really concrete about it. Next one.
No, not at all. For me, it started, I think, during my first year of master in Leuven when I went on exchange to the US, and I actually met somebody from Deutsche Bank, and he was also there, and he only did an internship, but he was already super impressive during our courses when we had to work with Excel and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is like really, really good. How come? He was also German, but that's one thing, and he was really super smart. But I didn't see that back then, and I was like, oh, really, I have to do this. And then I was always like interested in it, but not like super focused on it, to be honest. And after that, during that time also, I think that was 2012. It was the recruitment was super low, like nobody was hiring. So I realized from my current study, I'm not gonna get there. So then I started applying for a master in finance, and then eventually got into HEC and some other schools too, but I decided for HEC, and that was my trigger basically back then. Talking to this guy and learning from his experience at Deutsche, and by coincidence I ended up at Deutsche, but that's a different story.
Yeah, I was a bit of a late bloomer as well in that aspect. I started applied economics because it's a super general, broad education. You can basically do anything. Believe it or not, I actually did a bachelor in marketing, which I kind of regret. So I went to do finance instead. I liked it a lot, so I decided to do an additional master's at Vlerick, financial management. And very early on, we had this course about valuation and capital structuring. And the way you had to interact in a team, it was actually very representative of what banking is about. I think that really spoke to me. So in combination with all the company presentations and recruitment events that we did, I was very early on quite hooked on investment banking. So read up on it, as I mentioned in the slides, prepared, bought books, read them, read the news, and then you start applying. And I didn't initially end up at Morgan Stanley. I'm going to be honest, my resume wasn't good enough. So that's why I first did an internship at ABN AMRO in Amsterdam. Fantastic learning opportunity. As Philip mentioned, I mean, these local banks were very good as well. The hours are a bit less, so it gives you a very good indication of whether you like the job or not. And then you can basically make a sort of switch or a trade up if you want.
Okay, basically the question is about, everybody knows the hours are tough, right? But what is the hardest part of getting into the industry, basically? Okay, also working in the industry. Oh, working in the industry, okay. Yeah, personally the hours are not the worst. I think basically the intensity sometimes, some days when you're working with really demanding clients, and it really gets up your nerves, and everybody's just like chasing you all day. You have these kind of weeks, you know, and that's really tough. And then the hours just fly by, and you don't care. And afterwards, you go home and you sleep, and you just forget it, you know. And then it's a new day. That's how I feel it. But some people cannot cope with it. It's like really high pace sometimes, and it's not about the hours, you know. It's all about the intensity. It goes super quick. The phone is ringing all the time. You have to do tons of stuff. You have to create a model. You have like a task list that's like endless, basically, and you don't see end at the light of the tunnel, basically. And then you have to just like go for it. And it all in the end it's all okay. But I think that's very tricky.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I'll sort of give an anecdote. I recently advised on the IPO of Flow Traders, which is a Dutch financial technology company. It might not speak to you that much, but it's super popular in the Netherlands. So we were a couple of days before the listing. I was on the road with the co-CEO and head of investor relations. I was actually the only advisor with them, and we were meeting with potential investors just before the listing to see whether they wanted to buy a piece of the company. So I've done these meetings. But it's tube strikes in London. I don't know if you've been in London when it's tube strikes, but it's 10 million people, and it's horrible. It's horrible. So I was stuck in a cab on my way back to work from across the city, and I get a phone call from the managing director of one of the selling shareholders. So basically, the guy who hired us to sell his company was on the exchange, and he calls me, the first-year analyst, and he says, "Hey, I want to have some changes in the model, but I'm in a cab, I have nothing to write, I'm 1.5 hours away from my computer," and he says, "Yeah, I need it early afternoon, I don't want to see this, and this, and this." And as Philip mentions, those are the moments when it becomes super intense. And some people cannot cope with the stress, but I would say if you can then fulfill that assignment and be able to provide a good solution to your clients, they obviously appreciate that a lot, and for yourself it's super rewarding, because it's a great opportunity to have these assignments and to be able to provide that solution, and then have your client sending you an email that he really appreciates your work, even for for people our age. That's fantastic. Yeah, between the cities or between the employers? Philip, do you work with me? I guess it depends a bit on the banks. A lot of the international banks have a footprint, let's say in Amsterdam or in Frankfurt. Brussels, a bit less, I would say. I think if you look at the local banks, they tend to work less hours than sort of the real universal global banks. Now, really between cities, I don't know if there's really that much of a difference in work life.
If I may add to that, I know a lot of guys working, for example, at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch in Amsterdam, Credit Suisse, and me myself at Deutsche in Amsterdam. And it's two things basically. You're more visible because the teams are smaller. So in London, sometimes you can just sneak away, I guess. We see that with my colleagues and in London. But that's one thing. In general, I think we have more visibility, and some people just stick at the desk. Some of my colleagues, and I don't like that. Like, this is a FaceTime culture that you shouldn't do. And also I hear that from colleagues at other banks, international banks in Amsterdam. And sometimes, I think in general it's the same. That's my conclusion, probably. But that's because you work for an international bank. It's one big team, or we all colleagues, and we get the same salary. You see, it has to be the same more or less. Otherwise, people will be unhappy, or people will all transfer to Amsterdam, and then we have 100 people in my team, and that wouldn't work. So yeah, that's my takeaway. What was the question? Personally, I would say go to an event, talk to people, talk to bankers, and then perform well if there's a case, and get the visibility. You know, don't be the loudest guy, and think before you talk, but be there, have some presence, and do a good job basically. And then afterwards, also during the networking, you see some really good candidates coming in, acing the case, and leaving when it's during the drinks. But then you miss the second part, which is also very important, the networking part. So that would be my advice.
I think indeed that maybe combining the two questions about the location and the importance of the networking, I think that especially for smaller teams like Lazard in Brussels, for instance, we're paying a lot of attention to the fit. So both during the interviews and outside of the interviews, that's the utmost important. You spend a lot of time with your colleagues, so you at some point need to ask yourself, okay, do I see myself working next to him at 3 AM on a Saturday evening? So the fit is utmost important as well.
I think that goes for us too, probably, because we obviously had a lot of fines last year and the year before that. This is stuff that's around, but it's not really on our side of the business, so we're a bit isolated from that. You obviously read a lot of stuff in the press, and as I mentioned before during the presentation, a lot of it is true, and there's stuff that happened on the other side of the Chinese wall that's totally wrong, I would say. But I think everybody did it, like all of the banks, and that's no excuse, but that's what happened, you know. There's definitely an impact. Like the public opinion on big banks is pretty bad, so, and that's something we're working on, and not only at DB and all the banks, but I think all of the banks are doing it, and yeah, also for example BNP Paribas, yeah, they obviously it's huge scrutiny on us around these kind of players, but there's an impact, but it's difficult to measure it, I would say. And we don't see clients not choosing us because of this. They choose us because we're good at what we do, or because we have the relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in light of the crisis, a lot of banks had to sort of change their business model and their internal workings a bit to sort of conform with the regulators' changes and new demands. I think we've seen most of those changes implemented, and banks place a lot more focus now on compliance and really, and making sure that they don't violate any laws. Of course, you still need stuff like the LIBOR scandal, for instance. Keep in mind these are individuals, such as an individual trader and then a couple of his companions that basically mess about. The press gets the hang of it, and we got this huge shitstorm, right? That does not necessarily reflect, for instance, the way Barclays works as a bank. It doesn't mean they're a bad bank. It's just, yeah, some individual that makes a bad move and everything goes wrong and have to pay huge fines. But I think overall, sort of the industry is changing. I think banks are acting more ethical now. And in terms of recruitment for you guys, I think hiring has never been as good as now. Now it's a great time to join the industry, to be honest.
Yes, definitely. It seems when you compare yourself with other candidates, especially in group interviews, it seems like you're not as far as them or you cannot compete with them. But we actually take this into account when we evaluate candidates. Obviously, you have to prepare and you have to know the basics and you have to know them really well. But you don't need a finance background because you have people with a history background, basically. These are examples, but you have people with a history background working in investment banking. It's all about your mindset and how you actually can perform on the job. You don't have to be a good finance student, but you have to be a good banker, basically. And those are like a set of skills, like Vincent mentioned, that is not like really linked to one of the studies, I would say, or one of the university courses. So it's more than that. You can have a very diverse background and do well. Because like I have one guy on my team who's an aerospace engineer, and he's a very good banker too, so there's no correlation, you know.
Maybe just adding to that, I mean, in our team as well, we have, and he's here tonight as well, so there is a mechanical engineer, I think, part of our team. What he did though is he did a one-year program afterwards in London. So there's always this opportunity for you to mix both studies. If you feel comfortable regarding your technical background, or if you want to know more about the sector industry, of course you can do some readings on your own. You'll need probably more preparation than the other candidates that have done finance and economics. But I think that's a rule of thumb from what I've seen. The people, the engineers, they're really learning machines, so in a way that they can learn quickly complex concepts. So I'm not too worried about that.
Basically, the question, I don't know if everybody heard it, but it's about private equity as an exit route to investment banking, and why. The first question was how come that people from, for example, private equity or other industries don't go into banking? I can answer the last question, and then I'll switch over to someone else. But like, investment banking basically is a pyramid. So on every level there's people leaving the bank or doing something else, and in general you don't see people entering the industry after the associate level. So people stick around and move up the pyramid, or they leave after a while. So that's the reason you don't see people from, for example, private equity going into investment banking. And also it's very tricky to learn the skill set that a banker has when you have experience of 6 years in another industry. You're going to be lagging very far behind your peers that has been around for 6 years in the industry.
Yeah, I think concerning the exit opportunities, why many investment bankers want to go to PE is because in our case, you spend a couple of years on say, the private side, so you're advising the clients who want to sell. Well, PE is the other way around. You're the buyer, right? So you're going to buy companies and be involved on the other side of the transaction. So I think for many people interested in finance, they do it because they want to get a broader background and a broader knowledge base from one aspect. And then to tie that to your first question, why the switch is mainly from banking to PE and not the other way around, I think that's because banks are great learning schools. They're huge organizations as opposed to a PE. So it's much easier to roll into a position at a bank. You get a lot of training, it's a very structured process, it's also a very structured corporate ladder that you climb from analyst to associate to VP and so on. And PEs are a lot smaller. So in the first place it's a lot more difficult to get into. But it's also a lot more difficult to sort of climb that ladder.
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I think, yeah, the back office is huge. So we have, especially, I think for a bank like Bastien's, it's probably more lean. But for example, like at Deutsche, I know like the technology operations is immense, it's huge. It's maybe too big, and it's very inflexible, I can tell you that.
Sorry, maybe let me rephrase the question. Is the question, are you actually choosing your projects? Well, it's yeah, in a way you have to earn them. You need to also to be at the right place at the right moment. It's a bit of a luck as well. I mean, if you totally staff on something else, even if there is the ABI sub-Miller project running currently, if you totally start something else, it's a bit, you have difficulties adding hours to your day. So, I mean, it's a bit tricky. So there is part of luck. There is part of you liking a certain industry and showing that to the whole team, showing your involvement in that specific industries. And obviously you need to. It's a competitive environment, so you need to not fight, but you need to push for everything you can. If there is an interesting project, you need to say it, basically.
So to add on that, the way it works at for instance, a bulge bracket firm like Philips or mine, if you have a new project, you're basically going to create a project team. Now in the bank you have a lot of different teams, right? We, for instance, are geographical coverage bankers, so we focus on a specific region. We also got guys focusing on specific industries, such as, for instance, industrials or TMT. And furthermore, you have specific product teams, so that can be M&A, or that can be ECM, focusing really on IPOs and stuff. So if you have a project, you're basically going to take a bunch of bankers from different teams, so industry, geographical, and perhaps coverage, and form that project team. And then your staffer, the guy sort of dividing the workload between all the guys in one team, he's basically going to check, okay, so what is he already working on? What's his interest? Can you take this up? And based on that, you sort of form that project team?
At DB in my team, we have, when we don't have a project for a specific client, we have people covering the clients. So when there's a meeting, they will do the work because they know the client a bit. And we have somebody at analyst level, somebody at associate, MVP level, director MD level, covering the same client. So they always work together, even when there's no project. So when you have like an ad hoc meeting with somebody and to propose something, and when that effort actually translates into a project, this team naturally becomes a team that's going to work on it. If they don't have the staffing or the resources at that time, you're going to find somebody else who's well placed. But in general, the guys that know the company should work on it. That's how we see it. No, yeah, it's a bit merit-based. When you did a lot of effort on it, you earn it, basically. And when you don't have the time, somebody else will do your job. Yes, but it's not like, from what I know, it's not like in consulting when you really have to be close to all the partners to earn the projects. It's a bit different than that. It's just basically you have some accounts that you work on, and when something comes out, like a result comes out and it's a project, you work on the project. The last question.
Okay, so the question is basically referring to one of the slides where you can see the different roles of the analyst. We can put that again. Okay, anyway, so the idea is to know, okay, what is pretty much a breakdown, so okay, this one. So yeah, I would say that, I don't know, like maybe as a first year analyst, 50% of your time would be on the upper right box, so mainly crunching numbers, analyzing the business models of your company, of the peers, trying to understand the difference in the valuation multiples, for instance. And so a lot of crunching, a lot of Excel, so let's say between 40 and 50% of the time. Then you're spending as well a lot of time on PowerPoint, basically translating your analysis done in Excel in a nice presentation, understandable by your client. This might be maybe 25%, I don't know. Then of course, I'm forgetting a bit about the deal specific task because it's a bit redundant. I mean, it's a big mix with the two on the right hand side. And then with the remaining parts, I would say team events, of course, my report. Yeah, I would say less than 1%. And the rest would be, of course, attending the presentations. Of course, you're not attending all the presentations, but I think that it depends also on the team and how small or big it is. So, I mean, for Lazard, for instance, we have offices in Amsterdam and in Brussels. We tend to be a bit more under the budget brackets. So, of course, you'll be attending more meetings.
Hartelijk dank aan onze speakers. Thank you very much for coming here. We have a small attention for you guys as a thank you for showing up. You're all welcome to the reception afterwards. I have one small announcement. There are some people who left their cards at the scanners. So I have the student card of Arnaud Lorees en Matteo Klaaskes. En dan nog een Capitant lidkaart van Thomas Longeval. Dus die mogen jullie dan komen afhalen bij ons. Dus, hartelijk dank en welkom in de sessie.